if you're into vinyl, at some point, you're probably going to need a standalone external phono preamp. What to do? Welcome to Lancaster Hi-Fi. I'm Stephen Lancaster. Let's talk about phono preamps. And specifically, external phono preamps. Because I got 3 phono preamps right here. But I've also got one on my Adcom preamp. Why not use it? Well, let's talk. There could be a number of reasons. Generally, an external phono preamp is just going to be better than one that's just included as part of another device. Even if the circuitry is exactly the same, there are reasons why the phono preamp in a separate device might sound better than one's integral to a device, like an integrated amp or just a controller preamp or a receiver. And that has to do in part with how small phono signals are and how much gain you need with a phono preamp, and then the phono preamp's susceptibility to interference from other circuitry in the same box. So even if the circuit and components were exactly the same, you're probably better off having the phono preamp in its own box than in there with an integrated amp or a controller slash preamp or a receiver. You may also simply want to be able to change the flavor a bit, change things up. Try different phono preamps, because there are a lot of different phono preamps out there. I've got several right here. Let's just check it out for a sec here. All right. Here's the first one I got. This is the Rega FONO Mini A2D. I think the one they're selling now is the Mark II, which costs about $200. I think this one cost more like $100 when I got it, but that was several years ago. And I got it specifically to, be able to listen to my vinyl with, kind of a rinky-dink setup. I was using just my little Kinter amp and this and my turntable and whatever speakers I had at that point. I think at that point I was using just little Dayton Audio speakers with the ribbon tweeters. And so I got this in order to be able to listen to my vinyl with that sort of stripped down, close to the bone, super cheap system. I don't think this cost much more than anything else in that. Like, the speakers were around the same price. The Kinter amp was probably actually quite a bit cheaper than this. It also has utility as an analog to digital converter for records. So you can digitize your records with this. You can plug a USB cable in here, plug the other end of the USB cable into your computer, and record to Audacity and, do your thing, do click removal, fiddle with the gain, etc. And I've digitized a lot of my vinyl with this. Regardless of its quality as a phono stage, it has great utility for me as an analog to digital converter for vinyl. And it's a pretty good preamp. It's not as good as the other ones that are here for testing today, but it's pretty good. Nothing wrong with it. I've been digitizing a lot of vinyl within the last week and a half, and going from my other phono preamps to this one has not been disappointing in any way. It doesn't sound quite as good as those, but, you know, it'll do. If you buy one of these Regas and you live in the US or Canada or Mexico, I don't know, make sure you get the right AC adapter with American plugs. This is a transformer only. AC adapter for Rega only. Input 120 volts AC, 60 hertz, 15.7 watts. Output 24 volts AC, 500 milliamps. And so if you plugged in a higher voltage, say 240 volts, you'd get a higher output voltage as well. So you wouldn't want to get the UK version of this and just adapt it, you know, to plug in. This is only suitable for 120 volts. You wouldn't want to use one that's made for 240. I think when I got this, I accidentally got it with the UK adapter and I had to buy this one separately. And then I managed to sell the UK adapter on eBay. Sold it to somebody who was moving, or at least traveling to the UK. Oof. Probably next up in cost, and definitely much more special, is this EAR 834 clone made by a viewer and sent to me by David Clayton. Here's our turntable chassis ground. It says EAR 834B Phono Preamp, Prototype V 2.1, Clayton Acoustic Systems. We've got input RCA jacks, output RCA jacks. We've got the ground connection, a basic IEC 3-prong connector for power in, and even a 3-prong outlet for power out. And on the front it says EAR 834 Phono Preamp, Clayton Acoustic Systems, and then power, and it's just got a power switch. It's got 3 tubes, tubes 1, 2, and 3. Tubes 1 and 2 are 7025 tubes, which is a low noise version of the 12AX7. Electro Harmonics 7025 EH. Electro Harmonics always got to stick an EH on the end of everything. I guess they just want to make sure you know that it's an Electro Harmonics tube. Tube number 3 here is a JJ ECC82, otherwise known as 12AU7. The tubes are plugged into the sockets on a circuit board, which is attached to the rest of the chassis with some standoffs and then other standoffs that go and hold on this metal cover. Maybe I should just open this up so we can see what's under the bottom plate. But I'm figuring that all the sound circuitry is here on this circuit board and that our power supply is going to be down under. But let's just give it a little opening up and see. Okay, bottom plate removed. So we've got a transformer, 0 zone, input 0 to 110 volts, output 250 volts, 0.05 amps, and 14 volts, 1.2 amps. A 14 volt winding suggests that we're using 12 volt regulated power DC for the heaters in the tubes. And that makes good sense for a phono stage. Less likely to introduce any kind of hum or distortion. Anyway, there we go. So yes, there is a power supply circuit board in there. I can see some heat sink fins there. All right. Now let's close it back up. A viewer enough to leave a comment asking if I'd want to check this out sent this to me all the way from Florida. So that's pretty awesome. He also included an extra set of circuit boards in case I want to make my own. Of course, I'd need the other things: tube sockets, a chassis, a transformer, and of course all the components. I do have some plans to make a phono preamp. My plan now is to build it integral to a Sansui 1000 receiver that I've been restoring. I'm not a big fan of mounting tube sockets to circuit boards because you stress the joints every time you plug and unplug the tubes. One thing about this, these tubes really should be shielded. And without shielding, this tends to produce a lot of extra hum. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that when the time comes to check it out with sound. What is this EAR 834B? Isn't EAR a company? Yeah, EAR is a company. And the EAR 834 originally came out, I think, in the 2000s? Maybe earlier. I'll check and show it on the screen. And it was a very popular phono preamp in terms of a tube phono preamp. Since that time, there are all sorts of people making their own 834s. David Clayton's made his own. You can get any number of clones from China, and you can get kits to make your own. And I think David wants to perhaps sell kits, maybe just sell the circuit boards. You know, if you want to build your own, having a circuit board pre-made is, you know, there's a lot of utility to that. There's a lot of benefit there. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say this is his own design since it's a clone of an 834, but it has apparently been through a number of iterations since this is version 2.1. He has a video on YouTube showing his other one. He has, I think, two of these, and the other one is fully enclosed. And that's probably a good idea for reasons that I'll talk about in a minute and show. Now, I do have one complaint and one note of feature, okay? If this were mine, I would make the holes around these RCA jacks bigger, because the holes around the RCA jacks are pretty close. I can and will plug in my big Viborg connectors, but they'll basically have to be plugged in such that the housing is smack up against the grill there. You know, in general, that's not optimal. You generally want to be able to keep signal ground separate from chassis ground. I mean, signal and chassis ground may be the same, but you generally want a star ground that you direct your ground component of your RCA jack to, rather than have it just connected to the chassis where you plug it in. So in general, for example, all of my, you know, when I build an amp and with RCA jack inputs, I isolate the jack ground from the chassis so that I can run the ground over to where I want to have the star ground. It's not a huge deal, but if this were mine, I would change that. I would either make a new grill or just cut these holes bigger. The other interesting feature, I mean, it's not interesting. The usual convention is to have the right red on the bottom and the white left on top, and these are reversed. That's just a typical convention. It's a pretty standard convention, and this violates that convention. No big, but, you know, you would just need to be mindful if you're using this that, you know, up and down, left and right are reversed from the usual convention. Let's see now. I haven't looked at the circuit. I don't know how exactly this is put together. Given that it's got a couple of 702.5s, those would be used for gain and equalization. And then the last one, the 12AU7 or ECC82, that's going to be used for as a cathode follower at the end of the line, a buffer stage. And what I don't know is, I mean, it's just sort of a point of curiosity to anybody who's built or is building a phono preamp. You know, is this one channel and this is the other channel? Or is he using one half of this for the first stage for the left channel, the other half for the first stage on the right channel, and similarly here? So are the signals, you know, sort of going like this, or is it into here and then through that one? My general preference would be to have one channel go through this, the other channel go through this. But there may be arguments for doing it the other way as well. I have a third phono preamp here. The third phono preamp under test today is the iFi iPhono2. The current version of this is the iPhono3, which will run you about $1,000. It has its own extra utility in that, you know, relative to the other two phono preamps that we're looking at today, this one can do moving coil cartridges. So it has both moving coil and moving magnet inputs. I will be testing these all with my moving coil cartridge, but those two are moving magnet phono preamps, and I'll be using the moving magnet stage on this one. And in order to do that, I have on loan a Hagerman Labs Piccolo Zero, which is a head amp designed to take the voltages and currents from a moving coil cartridge up to the voltage and current needed for a moving magnet preamp. I've featured that in a separate video, so check that out if you want to learn more about the Hagerman Labs Piccolo Zero. But that's what I'll be using with all three of these phono preamps for comparison purposes. I've got this one set to moving magnet and plus 12 dB because this one has quite a bit of gain. Almost has enough gain to use as a moving coil stage. Not really quite enough, but in a pinch you could, if you shield the tubes. More on that later. All right, I think it is time that we listen to these. And like I said, I'll be using the Hagerman Labs Piccolo Zero as an intermediate stage between my moving coil cartridge and these. Let's listen. So just doing a hum check here. So there's full volume. That hum is something that I would like to deal with. That's basically a thing that's pretty common with a moving coil cartridge if you don't have good shielding and just, you know, wire hygiene between the signal path and whatever other electronics are in there. And in this case, I think it's the transformer that's in there that's doing the humming. Alright, round one, Rega FONO Mini. Let's do the EAR 834 next. Okay, now for the 834. But this is not the configuration that I've been using. Not exactly. And I'll demonstrate presently. Turn it up. Okay, it's got quite a bit of gain. You can hear by how much hiss there is. A lot more gain than the Rega. I'll keep it too high for a minute just for demonstration purposes. Watch this. Those tubes need shielding. Okay, let's try this again. Next, we will do the iFi iPhono2. Here's our hum. Turn it up all the way. So this one also has a lot of gain. I've got it on the plus 12 dB setting to make it more comparable with the 834.
The whole conceits, the clip replies, the same defeats. History repeats, the whole conceits, the clip replies, the same defeats. History repeats, the whole conceits, the clip replies, the same defeats. I hang around until be tortured, you'll never be alone in the bone orchard. I hang around until be tortured, you'll never be alone in the bone orchard. I hang around until be tortured, you'll never be alone in the bone orchard. I've been so wrong, that's the problem, and here's the hook. Everybody knows I've been so wrong, that's the problem, and here's the hook. Everybody knows I've been so wrong, that's the problem, and here's the hook. I don't wanna drop it on water, fire, can I be forever? I don't wanna drop it on water, fire, can I be forever? I don't wanna drop it on water, fire, can I be forever? And the balance of our love, the truth is late. And the balance of our love, the truth is late. And the balance of our love, the truth is late.
Impressions. Not too much hiss. It's picking up the hum that every other one that I've been using has. It seems just a bit veiled, muted, but then there's also like fair amount of sibilance as well. Part of that is I've got the volume cranked. And part of that might be, you know, whatever mics they were using and so on in production. Because I've played other tracks where the S's sound just fine. The 834 is giving me a richer bass, bigger bass, at the expense of a bit of muddiness in the mid-bass, mid-bass, something like that. I don't get the impression that there was anything that I heard on one of them that I was missing on the other, and vice versa. You know, I've been listening to the 834 for a while, and I don't need to be too awfully disappointed when I send it back to David. I mean, it's nice, I like it, but the iFi is good. And while they're not exactly the same, you know, I don't get the impression that one outclasses the other. This thing kicks ass. Not only is the veil lifted, but the bass isn't overpowering everything else every once in a while as it hits certain ranges, and, you know, as Declan's voice goes into that certain sort of deeper register where it tends to resonate. And, you know, he takes his voice through a number of styles in these couple of songs, especially the first one. With the iPhono2, it seems like there's less of a tendency for the deeper notes and the bass to become boomy. That's consistent with my other listening impressions. All right, well, let's wrap this up. So, let's talk about these preamps. And I also want to talk about a preamp that I have heard with this turntable and this cartridge that eliminates hum altogether. Let's back up. The latest version of this Rega will cost you $200. The latest version of the iPhono3, will cost you $1,000. EAR 834 clones all over the map in terms of cost. If you want to get an actual latest iteration of the EAR 834, I think it's the EAR 834L, from the actual, at least current incarnation of EAR, that'll cost you $3,000 or $4,000. Might be worth it. I mean, I don't know how much better it is than the various clones, including this one. How much would this cost you? Well, this is not necessarily for sale. You could get the circuit board. I don't know how much David's going to charge for those. You have to buy your own components, your own tubes, your own transformer, your own chassis. I gotta say, this is a really nice chassis he's put together. You do need shields for the tubes, as I demonstrated. I mean, you can do without them, but, you know, you don't want that hum from proximity to humans. You know, I've seen kits for as little as around $100, and then the prices just kind of go up from there. There are a lot of clones from China that go for, you know, a few $100s. So, in terms of price, in general, I'd say, you know, we're going, let's see if I can get all of these together in a shot. Wouldn't that be cool for the thumbnail? Okay. Wow! So, the Rega, $200. iFi, $1,000. This one, the EAR 834, anywhere from $100 to $4,000. This particular incarnation, you know, let's just say it cost you a few $100s to get this together, or to get something like it. To get as, you know, as decent quality as this, because it's clearly a high quality build. It's kind of heavy to hold like this. My fingers are getting tired and starting to hurt, so I'm going to put it down. Ugh. Well, I got to wrap this up because phone memory is almost full, and I filled it up before. And anyway, I think all I want to say at this point is these are all good phono preamps. Now, the one you decide, you know, it's up to you. Duh. I want to say this about the Rega, that, you know, it's not the best phono preamp, but it still has utility for me. Even though it's not my best phono preamp, I still use it because it allows me to digitize my records. I could get another analog to digital converter separately and do the same thing. But, obviously it would cost me some more money. Something I want to do, actually, but I don't have that yet. You know, the 834, it's a decent tube phono stage. And if you want a decent tube phono stage, then you should definitely look into that. I wouldn't say it's the definitive tube phono stage because I'm not sure that's a thing that exists. I think according to Morgan Jones, that is not a thing that exists. But maybe he wrote that before the 834 became the definitive tube phono stage. I don't know. The iFi is intriguing. You know, it's so small. It's smaller than their cheaper one. They have a cheaper one that only costs $250. I don't know that. I've never tried it. I don't know that much about it. It seems to be more common than the one I have, probably because it costs less money. The iFi is just incredibly versatile. It can do just about everything and sound really good in the process. None of these will get rid of the hum. I have heard one that does get rid of the hum, and it's the Mola Mola Lupe. But that's a $10,000 phono stage. I'd love to have the Mola Mola Lupe, but I don't have $10,000 to spend on one. Hell, even if I could get it for half price, I don't have $5,000 to spend on a phono stage. But if you do have that money, I definitely recommend the Mola Mola. It's an excellent phono stage. For me, it's a moot point because I don't have that kind of money in my budget. Well, I'm going to wrap this up before my phone quits on me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, please like, subscribe, comment, share. Do all those algorithm things that'll help me grow to the channel. But most of all, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you tune in again. And if you do, I will talk to you later. Have a good one, everybody. Cheers.